had the pleasure of having Mary Jane and Arlen with us for Traveling the Journey to talk about a program that is probably, as I was just sharing with Mary Jane, one of the best kept secrets in Riverside County. Most families who have someone in a nursing home, an assisted living, a board and care, memory care, don't realize that there's an advocacy program for their folks that are in these communities, and that this allows them to have a voice. But it also reassures the families that, for example, Arlen, he's going into these communities and visiting the residents and seeing physically in person what's going on there. So in addition to you having a voice, if you have a question or you're concerned about the level of care or protocols that are going on, you have a voice there, but you also have someone that can give you resources and talk to you about the reality of what your particular situation is. So I'm really happy to have them both here, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jane, and you can introduce yourself and Arlen. And I think what we decided, Mary Jane, is that you're going to go ahead and do some slides and information. And then what we'd really like to do is open this up to all of you for any questions or issues that you would like them to specifically address. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jane.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Great to see all of you. It's so wonderful. We've been trying to reach out to get more awareness to the community about the ombudsman. I didn't know what an ombudsman was, but I started going to Alzheimer's classes at Coachella Valley because I have a neighbor that was falling into dementia, and consequently found out that they were looking for someone out here, and that's how I got my job. So, but I have had a lot of caregiving experience. I have 2 special needs sons, so and they're adult, so lots of years with fighting for their care, and so I'm good at that. And let's see. And I've lived out here for like 10 years or so. So I know the community well. And, we have over 122 facilities out here. We have 12 skilled nursing and over 100, like 120 residential care facilities. And we have 7 of us. There's 2 other paid staff, and then the rest are volunteers. There's a total of 7 of us. And Arlen's one of our wonderful volunteers. And so it's just us over about 3,500 people out here that are in these facilities. So we really need volunteers. And so we're going to put up a poster showing you that, and you can get that information. And please, it's, you just have to donate like hours a month of your time minimum to be a volunteer. And it's like 36 hours of 36
Training.
hours of training to be certified. And then you have to do 18 hours. They upped it to 18 hours of continuing education throughout the year to keep your certification. And then it's just 20 hours a month minimum. So if you know anyone that might be interested, or if you are, please contact us, and we're happy to have you on our team. We got the best team ever. And there's an information sheet too that they'll put up maybe at the end or somewhere that has our information to contact, and other information where you can look online to check on these facilities, to see if they've had reports or problems there. A lot of good information there. I apologize for the glare on my glasses. I can't get it off for some reason. Anyway, let's see, what was I going to, oh, you know what? I even reached out, Pat, I reached out to Karen Devine to hopefully tell her about this. But I didn't hear back, darn it. But, I think we're going to start this ball rolling, and hopefully it's going to just keep rolling to bring more awareness. Let's see. So, you know what? I'm going to let Arlen, who's been a volunteer on your sheet that you received, he has been a volunteer for over 34 years. And he originally was from Idaho. He loves to sing. He's even had a radio show. Yes, you do.
I'm not singing.
He's had a radio show. Yeah, we want you to sing for us. He became an ombudsman in the Napa area. And when he saw the poor treatment that the nursing facilities were giving their residents, he is an amazing, strong, caring, uplifting, compassionate person with a heart of gold and a passion for making sure our residents are getting the care that they need. And he really is. He's my inspiration because I've only been at this for 2 years. So he's just great. So he's going to tell you all about the beginning of Ombudsman.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. And I have to say, I have a great deal of admiration for you guys that are, working with the Alzheimer's Association. I know it's a really tough road to hoe because I've worked around the Alzheimer's and dementia for a long time. Anyway, I started out, you might say, I had a tenant many years ago in Napa, and Ralph had a heart attack and ended up in intensive care. And when I got him out of there, we had to put him in a facility, and it was the best facility in Napa Valley, supposedly. And all I can tell you was a bloody nightmare. I would go in and find him in the most disgusting conditions, and there was nothing I could do. There were no rules, regulations, nothing. One night I went in after I had stores up in the valley, and I was tired and cranky, and I found him wet and with somebody else's wrinkled shirt on, and I paid for his laundry to be done because he's a very proud person. He actually grew up where Knoxbury Farm is, and then he went to Berkeley Ag School, which is now Berkeley University of California, Berkeley. And then he had a long, nice career in the agriculture business. And he was just such a nice gentleman to be treated like this. Well, I finally got him into a smaller place, and the last year and a half of his life was spent a little better. So then when I had more time, I saw the stores and I went to the volunteer center, and I told him right away that I did not want to do Meals on Wheels because I was in real estate and my time was not, I couldn't schedule it that well. And they came down to the word ombudsman. And I said, oh, for heaven's sakes, what's that? And they told me, and I said, bingo, that's what I want to do. And so my first facility was the Veterans Home up in Yowville above Napa, which has 900 veterans in it, and usually about 250 in the Veterans Hospital up there. And I always said that was the introduction by fire to the Ombudsman Program because, of course, it was state-run, and some of the conditions were deplorable. The food was horrible. And I have to say, after 3 years, the residents thanked me. I went to Sacramento one day, again, furious with the condition. Oh, the food was awful. Anyway, then I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I was there for 17 years. And again, working with the ombudsman. And then I moved down here to beautiful Palm Springs. I found out that down here you don't have to shovel sunshine. I was tired of shoveling snow.
That's a good one.
Anyway, it was a good move. And so I've been here ever since. But while I was in New Mexico, we had a Agency on Aging statewide conference. And at that conference, I met the lady that was called into Richard Nixon's office in 1972. And he said, I understand there's a problem in long-term care.
Good one.
She said, oh, yes, there certainly is. And so they met for about 45 minutes. and she had just read this word ombudsman. It means advocate for the citizens in Swedish, and the word is much longer in Swedish, but it's reduced to ombudsman. And then he dismissed her. By the way, he was running for re-election, which we've just been through a lot of that. So it's kind of, yeah, very opportune. And the next morning, she heard on the radio with everybody else that I'm installing this program, the Ombudsman Program. And what he did is every state was to have a state ombudsman. Now, since that time, it's been up to the states individually to do their own ombudsman plan. And I must say, California and New Mexico, they had two of the best plans, getting coordinators, getting volunteers. When my mother was in a facility in Wyoming, Wyoming had the state ombudsman and one volunteer for the
Wow.
whole state. And so when I went there, I spent 10 minutes with mother and an hour in the office helping them with ombudsman work. So that's kind of the background of what I've done. And it's been, obviously, it's been enjoyable. There's a lot of, the hardest thing is watching people go. You're not in there because the Hilton's full, as you know. But I've I keep thinking that I've had enough time, but then something happens and I just keep going. But I'd like to read our mission statement to you. Um, the mission of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program is to seek resolution of problems and advocate for the rights of residents of long-term care facilities with the goal of ensuring their dignity, quality of life, and quality of care. And that's that says it in a nutshell. We go in, and our whole program is based on confidentiality. As far as I know, still, if a resident tells me something, I do not have to disclose that to anyone. But having said that, when a resident does confide in me, I tell them up front that if it's about abuse or anything dangerous, I will not keep it to myself, so that they understand that, for their own good. Um, so that's kind of that in a nutshell.
But it is all confidential. And so if they need us to help them with a problem of some kind, then we always have to get their consent. Do you give us your consent to go ahead and talk to the dietary person or to talk to the administrator or to try to help this problem? And if they're reluctant and they don't want us to, then, well, it's kind of hard for us to help them unless they do give us consent. But we have other ways of trying to find out things without disclosing who they are, and just keep checking back with them, to make sure that they're kept safe. But it is very confidential and no retaliation is allowed at all. And Arlen is especially on top of that.
No retaliation, or I get whoever does the retaliation. I try my best to get them fired, because that's just um, they're so helpless. So many of them are so helpless, and they depend on us. And they're in a very bad situation for the first time, usually in their life. They can't speak for themselves, and but we do have a lot of residents' rights, and um, if we all observe the golden rule, we wouldn't need the rest of the residents' rights.
That's
But
right.
we do.
That's right.
Okay, Mary Jane.
Could you put the poster up, Priscilla? And so, yeah, I just wanted you to see the poster because oftentimes, of course, well, right now we cannot go into the facilities until the percentage of the COVID positive cases are diminishing to a certain percent. But this is the poster that should be up in all of the residential care facilities and skilled nursing facilities. And you've got our number there, a complaint number. Then there's also a 24-hour crisis line number. And then those get called into the call center, and then they get routed out to us or to me or the certain ombudsman that's over that facility. So just kind of wanted you to be aware, and so that you could point that out to your family member or loved one in there. If they're bedbound, that's kind of difficult too. So that's why right now it's especially important. You can go back now if you'd like, Priscilla. Because we can't go in, we're checking on these residents, and because our whole thing is that we're able to see them, go in and see them and talk to them personally, not to ask the administrator, how is everybody? Because they're going to say everybody's fine, right? So we're try to do, I know we have been virtually getting in on the residents council meetings when we can, or at least talking to the president of the residents council, since they're kind of getting those back together now, and or being able to call a resident that we know, they have a phone number, so we can call them, they can talk to us if there's a problem or an issue, and or we can see them with a tablet or FaceTime. So we are really staying closely that way and trying to make it so that it's private, because they should be able to talk to us privately. So you notice our hats, and you took us off, but I want to tell you why we were wearing our hats. We wear so many hats as ombudsman. Oh my goodness, which I learned coming into this. We are caregivers, we're therapists, we're mediators. We have to be so good at so many different things. And what I realized probably more recently is, like, you've probably seen that show Columbo, because with one case I was working on recently, it's like, I'll go home and I'll think about, I got another question for you, and then I'll call the person, I got one more question for you, because we're listening to them, the people, the family, we're listening to the resident, or we're listening to the facility, and we're trying to put all this together, and so it's really, boy, it keeps your brain going, let me tell you. So that's why we wear all of our different hats. Arlen, can you think of another hat that you wear?
Well, it helps to be a little mean.
Mean, okay.
A little ornery.
Okay. Well, we got to be tough about things. They have to know that we mean business. Yes.
Yeah.
The facilities, not, well, our residents, of course, we have empathy and sympathy, to be sympathizing with them. So let me just see, before we can start the questions and answers, we are state and federally, we have laws that allow us, ombudsmen, to go into these facilities. They cannot turn us down. They cannot refuse us from entering these facilities. So if there is a real serious issue during COVID, we would gown up, we would put all our PPE on, and we would get in there. And usually it's going to have something to do, if it was a physical issue that wasn't really serious, and or a sexual issue of some kind, we would be in there investigating. But until we get the go ahead, unfortunately, we can't go in yet, but we would if it was serious enough. And we also have the right to handle financial issues if this person is feeling like a family member is stealing their money, which happens a lot. We can refer that to law enforcement. We have all kinds of connections where we can help these people. Let's see.
Well, I will say, okay. I will say this, that if it's a good facility, they love their ombudsman. It's what we do. We educate and we help them. Most of these facilities now are owned by big corporations. And I have to say, they come out with some of the craziest policies you've ever heard. Some are just totally illegal. And to fight them is quite a chore, but we win because it's the law. But I just have to say that we just have to keep a good eye on what the corporate offices come up. Sometimes I wonder if the ones writing their policies have ever been inside of a long-term care facility.
Mhm.
They're just nuts.
Have their boots on the ground there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially, yes, I'm glad you brought that up because it is part of it is for us to educate the facilities. We need the facilities. We don't want to close them down unless it's like really, really awful, right?
Right.
But we want to work with them and keep them open because we desperately need them. But we need them to be good and taking good care of these residents because they have rights. And what came up most recently, it was the vaccines being rolled out. So most of our skilled nursing facilities have all been having the vaccine. But what was really important to us is because if there's a resident there that doesn't have capacity and they don't have a representative, a POA, an agent of some kind, then we got to be involved because they have to be able to give informed consent if they want that shot or not, if they want that vaccine or not, which is exactly what they're supposed to be doing. The facility is supposed to be doing if for a flu shot or for any kind of a medical procedure that's needed for these people that don't have capacity. And so, or a representative to stand up for them. So we've kind of been arguing with the facilities over this. And we put the word out there early on because there's certain rules and regulations that say that they cannot do this without following this protocol, with trying to find, well, basically declaring what they're verifying their capacity. And then if they don't have it, then to do all they can to find a representative. And then if they can't, then they've got to file for public guardianship or through the courts for a health decision maker. And even though that's going to take some time, still that's the process unless there's an emergency situation. And then, but in that case, they would have to document everything that they've done, show it to us, and then we would give it to Sacramento and it would be decided that way. So that's why with these facilities, there's 3 different dates. There's the first date for the first dose, second date for the second dose, and then there should be a third date for the ones that were missed. So if in the meantime, they're able to verify these people, then, they can continue to do that. But I've been kind of going back and forth with one facility and they ended up giving them the shot. And after we've told them all these things, and now it's going to be referred to licensing. So licensing will contact, then we close the case at that point, and then licensing will deal with them because they have violated the residents' rights. Let's see. Should we open it to questions and answers, you think, or?
Sure.
Well, let me just say one more thing. So yes, in the state, each state has an ombudsman, a state ombudsman. So ours is up in Sacramento, Joe Rodriguez. And then we have 30 programs here in California, 30 ombudsman programs. Our program is overseen by the Council on Aging in Irvine. So they encompass Riverside, which we're under Riverside's guys. And but there's 30 programs here. So each one has a different agency that's over them. I guess, anyway, so let's do the questions and answer. More things will come up that way, I believe.
All right, thanks, MJ. My first question is from Francis, and do the board and care facilities fall under your umbrella as well?
If they're licensed.
Okay.
Lots of times there's a confusion with what they're called because we used to call them board and cares, right, Arlen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we call them residential care facilities, but it could still be a board and care. If they're licensed, yes, we cover them.
Okay, thank you. And before the session started today, I think you and Pat were talking about an issue, and Pat, maybe you can bring this up again, where there was a community that wanted to charge a family for private care. Can you elaborate on that?
And when I'm talking about this issue, I'm talking specifically about memory care communities. And one of the laws, according to community care licensing, is that before a community can accept a resident, they need to do an assessment on that particular individual. So they need to physically see them and do an assessment. If the individual is not able to articulate or answer questions for them, then oftentimes the family member will be involved in it. But the point of it is to make sure that the community is going to be able to meet this individual's needs, physically, mentally, spiritually, in all aspects. So what's been happening, and this is a frequent occurrence, is that the community oftentimes won't do the assessment. They'll talk to the family, they'll get the physician statement from the physician, and they'll accept the resident. And then after a few days, they'll call the family and say, I'm really sorry, but we're having a lot of problems with your mom, your dad, your sister's adjustment here, because they require more care than we have staff to address it. So we're asking you to hire a private caregiver to come in from 9 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon until we can get this resolved. Well, in most cases, the families don't understand what their rights are, even though they signed an admission agreement that said that this resident's needs were going to be met for this much money a month. And so they go ahead and get someone, and then all of a sudden realize financially that this is not going to work for them. A private caregiver to come in is anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour. So if you're asking somebody to do that 8 hours a day, in addition to the fee that they're paying, it becomes a financial burden. They'll call our office, they may call the ombudsman's office, because they're asking the question, can they do this? Am I obligated to do this? Well, the answer is no, you're not obligated to do it. However, when I suggest to them that they contact the ombudsman or licensing, they get very nervous because they're afraid that the facility is going to take out, as Arlen and MJ were saying, that they were going to retaliate against the loved one that's in the facility. So, this is a case where the family members didn't realize what their rights were, and that this was not an obligation on their part. And what they really need to do, instead of hiring that caregiver, is talk to somebody, a resource, and find a community that takes care of people that have behavioral issues. It may be a temporary thing once they get settled. A lot of times it has to do with the staff. They're not trained well. And so they get upset with the resident when they leave their room or want to go into somebody else's room or want to leave, or whatever the case may be. So it's a real challenge, because a lot of times the families are just afraid to do what their right is in terms of the ombudsman or licensing. And we want to educate people that this is not a policy that should be enforced in any community. If you take somebody and you can't take care of them, that's the community's problem. Once they're in your care, you're responsible for them.
That's right. And they have to give notice too. If a higher level is needed, if any kind of higher level of care is needed, they have to give a 30-day notice, I believe. And you telling that story, it reminded me of a man that when I first kind of began, that he was in a facility in a memory unit out here, and he was an attorney, and his partner was responsible for him. And they were older gentlemen. Maybe they were in their 80s or the early 80s. Anyway, his partner had the same issue. He was getting letters from the facility saying that they kept upping the fees for this and that, and they're providing this and they're providing this now. And then they even moved him because initially he was in the assisted living part, then they moved him to the memory unit without even telling the the partner. So he was really upset about all this, and he reached out. I guess he found out about us somehow and reached out, and that's when I got involved. And so we always want to make sure to talk to the resident first to make sure, because they're the ones we want to see if they want our help, you know. And so I went to visit him. I'll never forget. And oh my gosh, you could tell, I could see the bright light still in his eyes, you know, that it was still there. And we were talking, and I kind of brought up the fact that he was an attorney, and I told him, because I was kind of going through my own lawsuit at the time. So it's like, so it was just so great to talk to him, and I was able to bring a smile to his face, you know. But I could tell he was so frustrated for being there, because he was so bright and he didn't need to be there. And this one woman came over and tried to kind of kiss him or something, and he didn't want that, you know. And so it was very upsetting. So, but when we get involved, it's and it shouldn't be this way, but when we get involved, people are getting better care. So the sooner they can get us involved, the better. But anyway, so then in dealing with this partner, we moved him out of there. We moved him to a board and care or assisted living home, like a 6-bed home that has, because we have some wonderful ones out here. And oh my gosh, he got the best care. He was so happy. And he did end up passing away because he had I forget the medical problem that he had, but he was happy at the end, you know. And that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, it makes me tear up, because I'm so glad I remembered him, though, because so they need to call us. This should not be happening at all. And so please get the word out there that if anything like that happens, you know, they cannot do that. They can't up those prices like that. And then they can fight. I mean, they can say, well, make them prove, how are you doing this? You know, what are you doing? And it turned out this guy wasn't getting the care that this person was trying to pay for. And I don't think the partner ever ended up having to pay those fees anyway, because there were some back fees. And they'll try to say, oh, you got to pay this before you're sent to the other facility. You know, no, they can't keep you there without having you pay back whatever they say you owe. So anyway, does that answer your question, Pat, or does that help in any way?
Right. I think also we have some resource sheets for families when you're looking into possibilities, doing your homework down the road. You want to look at some memory care communities and see what's available here. We have a sheet of questions that you should ask when you're going to a community, you know, about those kinds of things. Well, what if after I place my husband, he has problems sleeping at night and he's up all night until, you know, he can get acclimated? Are you going to call me and tell me that that's problematic? You know, ask specific questions. And, you know, that may help flush some of these things out when they realize that you are a good consumer and an advocate for your person and you know what your rights are.
That's perfect. Yes, to ask questions up front. I was going to say, get an advocate to go with you before you sign on the line. You know, and there's companies out here too that help to you can go in and they will help you place the person, right?
Right. Placement agencies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can do your investigating first before that. And then if there is an issue, call licensing. This is what the best thing to do is to call licensing and let them know that this problem is happening. Or if you call us, you know, then we can get in there and help out too. But licensing needs to know that this is happening in that facility. And then we have a tracking system. We have to enter all of our information in this tracking system of our cases and our activities and things that we're doing. And so if a certain name is there a lot, you know, then our people see it, and licensing I believe can see it too. And it comes up, and then that person, you know, could travel from facility to facility, but then they could, you know, licensing can do something about it. So anyway, so yes, I hope that helped answer those questions.
Well, and just so you also know that if you call licensing and report something, they have to respond to that within 10 working days. When they go to the community, they never reveal It's all confidential, just like the ombudsman.
Yeah.
The staff can ask, well, who called you? You know, what was, but they don't say that. They just say, I'm here to investigate, and they'll, you know, level of care, staffing, whatever the particular issue is. So, and they will respond to it within 10 days.
And on the info sheet that we have, there are, I believe there's the numbers for licensing also. There's community care licensing is the licensing over assisted living facilities. And
Right.
then the California Department of Public Health is over the skilled nursing facilities.
I think this is the one you're referring to.
Yes.
Okay. And so you all know, for the people that are in the meeting today, I will email all of these flyers to you. And Helen, I think I saw you lift your hand. Did you mute yourself and ask a question? Let's see if I can get there.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I couldn't see my. The question I was going to ask was related to what you've just been talking about. It sounds as if the ombudsman know a lot about what's happening in all of the residential facilities here, and licensing does too. So when you're looking for a residence, how do you have access to find out how many complaints or how much concern there is on the part of the ombudsman or the licensing?
That's on this list that she just showed you. There's a website that you can go to, and it will show you any of the deficiencies, the times they've been there, and what has gone on in that facility.
And do most of your, when you find a situation, does it usually end up with licensing so that there's sort of a comparison between what your activities are and what is listed as issues with the license for that facility?
I'm not quite understanding your question.
Yeah, no, as I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Good. No, we go in and we handle a lot of problems. I probably have 3 or 4 every time I go, especially into my larger facility, which is 178 beds. But I would say, and it's a facility I work very well with. And I think by the time I leave that facility, everything has been corrected. And that's a plus. That's why facilities like us, because we can go in and find the problems. They're open to us. They trust us. And then I can go to whatever head of the department, say it's food or the nursing, I go to the director of nursing, whoever I need to go to make a correction. And often, most of the time, it's something they don't know about. And that's why, like I said, if a facility likes us, because they know we can bring these problems to a head, and then I go and make sure that they are, handled properly.
So the fact that you might be having several issues at a facility doesn't mean that that's not a good facility. It just means that.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, because some of the complaints, well, they didn't like the way the peas were warmed that morning. No, but you know what? I think a lot of it is attention. They just like the attention and somebody to talk to, and not, and it's a valid complaint. If they had peas for lunch and they weren't warm enough, that's a valid complaint.
But it does need to be initiated by the resident or the resident's family. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
and quite frankly, I've got some good snitches in the facility that talk to me on the confidential, and those are, that's terrific. I love my snitches. They're on staff.
Yeah, once we know the facility.
Because they don't like it. They don't like to work in those conditions. So anyway, it's what, it's what you learn on the job.
All right, we have another question
Let
coming.
me just, can I
Sorry.
finish with that
Yes,
one?
go ahead, MJ.
We collaborate with licensing. Like I need to call one of the licensing people right after this meeting because she has a question in regards to a facility or a resident probably at the facility. So, and then what happens is they do a survey every year, right? Arnold,
Yes.
Arlen,
No,
they do a survey. And which means they'll go in and really, they'll talk to the residents, they really do a thorough investigation. And then that's public knowledge too. It's there in the facility that you can look at, and then it would be online. And that's going to point out any deficiencies that they might have. And we're called in at the end of the survey so that we can hear what's going on there. And then it's really good because then we can kind of keep an eye on that situation in that facility. And so like for other volunteers, if one problem has been kind of persistent there, they know to really keep an eye on that particular issue.
and they also call us at the beginning of the survey,
Oh, yeah.
and
Mhm.
because they want to know what we know. And
All right.
usually there's an area, maybe it's the lack of staffing. As I said before, licensing can do more about the staffing than we can. We make sure that they're under the state and federal regulations of staffing. But if a facility has more problem residents and definitely needs more staffing, then licensing can confront that and make sure they get more staffing in that particular facility. So yeah, we're called for the entrance and the exit. And also in that facility, as Mary Jane said, the survey is usually it's supposed to be in a obvious place in the facility, so anybody can come in and look through it. And the survey usually takes close to a week.
All right. I have a couple questions from our members here. And for starters, they're asking, can you just quickly go over the procedure, sort of bullet points from when you get a complaint to the resolution? What are the steps that you take?
Can I give an idea of a complaint? Give me
Sandy, did you want, can you think of anything specifically? Hang on, she's gonna go ahead.
Sure. I've had a lot of experience with ombudsman for my dad, but not here in California. But one of the big issues with him was he had hearing aids that were uncomfortable for him. So at night he would take them off, put them in a Kleenex and put them on his table. And then the next morning they'd be gone because somebody would come in and take all of the garbage and throw it in the garbage can and throw it in the trash. So that happened really 3 times. I had to replace his hearing aids. So after the first time I called the ombudsman and they came in and they talked to the staff about going through the Kleenex and making sure, by touching it that there's nothing in the Kleenex before they throw it away. But it didn't really get resolved because it happened 3 times. And my dad was in memory care. So, talking to him about not doing that,
Yeah.
that wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Arlen, you probably know
That's
exactly
my
what to do.
question. How would you address something like that?
Well, they have to pay for it. They have to get him new hearing aids because a lot of times they'll lay there and they actually put their hearing aids under in the sheets.
Yeah.
And we just go in and they roll up the sheets and throw them in the laundry, and the hearing aids get ruined.
Yeah.
So no, that's definitely, and they need to be on the inventory. This is very, very important that
Yeah, I didn't know
everything
that.
like that is in the inventory. And no, the facility absolutely has to pay for it. I've never had a problem with that.
Okay.
The facilities have always come through and paid for it because they know it's their responsibility.
Okay.
But it's really important to keep an inventory of everything. And
Everything.
then they have to pay, give it all back or pay for it. So, but they won't pay for, it's hard to enforce it if it's not on the inventory.
I
Oh,
recently had a resident, male resident, that lost his gold chain that he said he paid 18,000 for.
Wow.
yeah.
It wasn't on the inventory.
Oh, shoot.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd like to see the gold chain that cost $18,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had a memory problem too.
Oh,
And I do have one other really quick question. This came from a group member of mine. She had a loved one in a board and care. There were 6 beds there. And she made a complaint to the ombudsman about something about how this person was being treated. And once she made the complaint, the facility made rules for her because they knew the complaint came from her with only 6 residents and it was a pretty specific complaint. I mean, it's not hard to figure that out. But they would not let her visit without calling previously, or they would stop her at the gate and say, ask if she had an appointment before she could get in. And every time she did get in after that, her loved one was in a wheelchair in the living room, apart from where the complaint actually takes place, which was in her bedroom. And so she never got a real good idea of whether or not it was still occurring, because they made an effort after they knew that she had complained to get her up and into the wheelchair and into the living room. So is that okay? Do they have the right to make those kinds of rules once they know something like that?
absolutely not. No,
mm-mm.
no, absolutely not. And they just need to let us know, because then we can help the situation. We would be calling well, as long as we get the residents' consent, and or if they're not able to, then the POA's consent to go forward and move forward to help the situation, then I would, and Arlen too, I would call the administrator, the owner of the facility, let them know what's going on. And then, like I said earlier, once we're involved, things seem to get better, because then we continue to check on it, and I had a facility where they didn't have our poster up. And lots of times they don't want it up, right? Because they don't want the resident to see the number to call. So it'll be behind a table or something. And so I was persistent, and this was after COVID though. I said, you need to take your tablet and show me where the poster is, So yes, we can follow up, but we can't unless they let us know, and they definitely cannot do anything like that to prevent the resident from seeing their loved ones and family members. Of course, that was before the restrictions now, but
Right. This was too. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Now-
so my advice to them would be that they need to just keep contacting the ombudsman and let them know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. And then we would have that ombudsman that's over that facility would be helping the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
I've
you.
got 3 facilities like that that
Now,
are very deadly problems.
Oh,
when
really?
when the families are coming to you with their complaint, do you stay in touch with them throughout the process of investigating and working on it in the resolution?
Yes.
Definitely. And especially, well, first we always need to get the residents' consent. And if they're not capable of that, then we go to the POA or the agent, whoever that is. Then we work closely with them. And as long as we get their consent, and as long as they give us consent to go forward, then we work closely with them to resolve the issue. Yes, to the end, and then and beyond. I mean, I have a gal that has ALS, and she was in a skilled nursing and helped her with issues, and she was able to move into an acute 6-bed facility because she has a trach and everything, and she can't move. But she found a facility in the Riverside area that it's like a home. It's so wonderful. And I've stayed close with this family, and now she's gonna have a birthday party coming up. She's having a magician. It's all gonna be virtual, but she's online. She has a fundraising thing for Alzheimer's, for ALS, and it's just, so yeah. But like Arlen said, we get so attached to these people, and so when they're not here, they leave us, it's hard. That's the hardest part, but no, we stay with it to the end.
Awesome. If anyone else would like to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. You can wave at me or put something in the chat area. We've had some really good discussions. And oh my gosh, the amount of caring that you put into it is inspirational.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's what you can imagine. Our ombudsmen, our volunteers, they're just the best group of people you would ever want to know, so passionate and caring.
Yeah, it's just bringing it up to current, my big facility. When I'm finally able to go back into the facility, uh, I attended residence council every month by invitation. And when I finally go back, there's not one of my residence council that's there anymore due to COVID, or they were taken out by the family. So, going back, it's going to be hard. It's going to
Yeah.
be very
It
difficult
is hard.
because I've known some of these for 5, 6 years, and yeah, that is the tell new volunteers that this is what we are facing. And I just found out Tuesday that the husband of one of my RCFEs passed away last week from the virus. And they run a lovely, beautiful RCFE, a board and care, and it just broke my heart because he was there often helping around, and but his wife and their daughter both are RNs and run a beautiful, beautiful home, well kept. And I would be there for when they served lunch, and I'd think, oh, I'm hungry. Because a lot of them are not that good. But it's just. And then another one of my RCFEs, the owner has just got off of. He came down with the virus, as did two of his residents passed away with the virus, and they were just clean up until about 6 weeks ago. They had no virus at all, and somehow it got in there, and boy, when it gets in there, it just seems to go like wildfire. Uh, anyway, he's been out for a month and just got back in, but that is definitely the hardest part for me, anyway.
We forgot to bring up about the advanced healthcare directives, Arlen. In skilled nursing facilities, they so they can do an advanced healthcare directive where they choose who their agent is to care for them should they become not able to make those decisions. That's just in the skilled nursing facilities. An ombudsman has to witness that. They can't have a notary come in. They can't just have two witnesses because we have to verify their capacity for being able to make that decision. So during this COVID problem, we can't go in to do that. So there is something called a probate code 4711, which the resident can still choose their agent. We have a sample form that they can fill out choosing the agent. They just have to have someone from the nursing facility witness it. And then that's put in their file. And then we're made aware of that. So as soon as we do have the ability to get in there or to do it, Arlen has a way of getting it to happen too. Then we'll do that official one. But that other one is good for like 6 months, or if the person leaves the facility, or if they were to pass, unfortunately. But so that's really important that people know that, because I recently had an issue where this one resident was taken out by his caregiver a lot, and he was thinking, he didn't understand how we needed to witness it, so he had it done outside of the facility and had it notarized, thinking everything was great, but it's not valid. Luckily, there was a durable power of attorney over everything, so that kind of encompassed it. So, but otherwise, it would not have been valid, if there was some issues that were going on. The other one thing I wanted to talk about was that during this COVID situation, in these facilities, they're trying to keep the people safe, right? And they're doing a really good job with the assisted living facilities. And that's why they don't want anybody in there that doesn't need to be. But once things calm down, then they should be opening like a patio area. They should be, when we call and check on these facilities, we want to make sure that they have activities going on for the residents. What are your activities that you're doing? How are you providing the family members and the loved ones to interact with your residents? How is this happening? Because can you imagine, you know, this such a long period of time with people getting depressed and just so sad. I mean, we are when we don't have those problems, you know, so it's so incredibly important that we're on top of that with making sure they're interacting. And another great thing that if you could encourage this with people that you know that maybe have family members here, to start a family council, because we can't do that, but we can be invited to be a part of the family council. And so now they could do a monthly or a weekly virtual family council meeting with the other families that are in this facility. So I would really say if you could help that to happen when you're talking to the families, why don't you start the family council meeting, you know, and let's get everybody's emails and, you know, start connecting with and then, because then we can hear from them, you know, so-and-so, you know, well, we hear more from the families because we can't be in there, right? So we want to encourage that. We want to encourage the families to get really involved, or the loved ones, the advocates, to help us out. I don't, can you think of something else, Arlen, that's important?
Yeah, another thing, and I've been involved, especially, I don't know why in Santa Fe, I had more of them, but I got very involved in families and the facility. Usually the resident wasn't even there, but so we do, it's almost like the lawyers do. We would be at a table and I would run it like a court. And so that nobody spoke out of turn. And I always said that I had an eye in the middle of my forehead, and that was always on the resident. And I'm proud to say that I never left one of these family meetings without we had a plan. And they were talking, because usually when you have these, somebody has stopped communicating with the facility or with the family or whatever, and usually a misunderstanding. Once you get everybody talking, and we were always able to come to an agreement. And so that's another thing we do, and I love it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Definitely, we get involved in a family council.
And that's again why the facilities do like us, because we act as a medium for between the facility and usually the family. I've always said I love my residents, but sometimes the families can be a pain in the you know what.
Exactly.
And a lot of times, you know, the family's not doing what they're supposed to be doing either, I have to say. And so that's we, like Mary Jane said, we wear a lot of hats.
That's our mediator hat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mediator is what I wanted to say. In fact, I did take through the state, I did take a course on mediation, and there was just me and one other ombudsman, and the rest were attorneys.
Oh,
That took his mediation course. So Mary Jane, sometime I want to do that at one of our meetings, is how to mediate.
I think that would be great. We need that.
It's really helped me a lot.
I remember in one of the skilled nursing facilities, this resident couldn't swallow, because lots of times they'll have problems with swallowing. And so I think she had a G tube, meaning she was being fed, I guess, through her stomach, right? So see, we got to learn the medical terms too. But the family was insisting on wanting to feed her I mean, it would have killed her, right?
Oh, my, yeah.
So so I was called in to try to mediate this, and
Yes,
uh,
indeed. Yeah.
it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's what the,
but you get everybody together, you can kind of work out a plan, like Arlen said. So
yeah, it's a good tool to use, actually. Yeah. So that's what we do. Love it.
Anybody
Well, and
else
Yeah.
have any questions for Arlen or Mary Jane? You can wave your hand, or Tom, do you have a question? No?
and I do want to bring up one thing, if I
Bob,
may.
wait a minute, Arlen. One of our, Bob has a
Oh,
question.
good, good.
Problems with larger facilities or smaller facilities?
Well, I would say with the larger ones, well, I don't know. A lot of my really bad cases are with the board and cares.
Mhm.
Either they're very, very good, like the one I just mentioned where the husband passed, or they can be just awful. They can really be awful. And I'm working with 3 that I would just frankly like to close and just have somebody start over again.
There a way of finding
But I have some that I wouldn't hesitate for a minute if I needed to go to one, to go to any one of these. I have 11 total I go to. But yeah, the larger, they do have more problems because there's more people and more families.
mhm.
We do get our problems.
And I think the ratio to the smaller ones is better, per the resident. When the larger facilities, it's more scattered, and so
Not as
and
hands-on.
it depends on the staff, the administration, and all of that. I mean, there's some really
Yeah.
great ones,
Yeah, it's the administrator and the director of nursing are the 2 main people in my book. You get a bad one of either one of those, and you got problems.
A rating system that's available to us?
I believe as you look online at that fact sheet that we sent, that it does rate them.
The survey rates them
Mhm.
definitely. Yeah.
Bill is going to be sending that out?
Can you send
Yes.
that out to them? Yeah.
Yes, I will be sending that out.
And can I give you, I didn't put the phone numbers on there, darn it, because I did this really fast. I have our crisis line and the complaint line, but I'd like to give you the numbers for licensing. Can I give you those and then somehow you can incorporate that, Priscilla?
Sure, Mary Jane, just email that to me and I will, I'll get that out as well.
Okay, yeah, and then they can call, they know who to call to do a complaint, and then they'll get back to you, but yeah, go on those websites that I put on the list, and you can see the how they rate them and any issues that they've had.
Great.
I have one request. What we need out here in the valley
Oh, yeah.
is a good, fairly large memory unit that's affordable, that paid by Medicare, Medi-Cal, and because we really don't have that. We have a few memory units. They're very expensive. I know that one even has a pretty good waiting list. But I go, like I said, to a large facility, and I could name at any time like 9 residents that really, really should be in a memory unit, but they don't have the means to go to one. And what happens is it takes a lot more time with them than the other residents. So, and the staff is not trained to
Yeah.
take care of dementia and Alzheimer's patients. So I've written to Dr. Ruiz and a couple other people now, but I'm at a loss where to go from here. I have not had an answer, by the way. but I would love to see that. I worked with a fairly large memory unit in Santa Fe, and one thing that I loved was they had a wonderful, wonderful psychiatrist on staff. And I'm telling you, I likened her. I always said she was like a mechanic fine tuning a Rolls Royce because she could just about perform miracles. She
Wow.
really knew what she was doing, and she cared. And unfortunately, when she was in graduate school, they discovered she had MS, and as I knew her along the years, that developed more and more. But she was still just right on the job, right on the ball. But I've seen what can happen, and also with activities.
Yeah.
I remember I was in this one facility when this lady came in, and she was all bent over, and oh, oh dear. And I had occasion to go talk to her about 3 weeks later, and I couldn't find her. And I went to social services, and I said, I'm looking for so and so. She said, well, she's right there. Well, it got her. She was there lifting weights,
Wow.
little weights, but nevertheless, they were weights. And I would have recognized her in 100 years.
Yeah.
So these are the things that, keep us going. And it's like miracles. It's like little miracles happening all the time. You love to see this. And like some of my board and cares, they have so much compassion and feeling. And you go in and the residents are all groomed. And I remember I went in and this lady, I tell you, she looked like she had just come out of a fine salon on El Paseo, and and she passed away about 2 months later. And oh gosh, she was young, and no, she was 101. But they had her so nicely groomed, and she just was so erect. She didn't slump. She didn't have any of that going on. So, it's when we can see things like this, we're just it makes our job worthwhile.
Yeah.
I had a question about licensing. If a family calls licensing instead of the ombudsman, I hate to say that word, it's so difficult, but does the licensing get back with the family, even though I know it's anonymous complaint to the facility, but does licensing stay with the family as well? Or you
If
just
you give them information, yes, that licensing will get back to them, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's resolved, do they kind of keep them appraised of what's going on?
Oh, yes,
Complaint?
definitely.
Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up, one other thing is that just because a facility costs a lot of money, and especially right now when we can't go in, we're not allowed to go in. So oftentimes in these facilities are like $5,500 or whatever it is. Doesn't mean they're going to get, and they promise that they're giving them, so advertisements, on TV and whatever. It was it might not be happening, because we just had something happen recently with one of these type of facilities that the person lost 60 pounds. All of her belongings were missing, and canes, watches, you name it. And the family didn't tell us, we didn't know that this was happening. And since we can't go in, we didn't know that it was happening. And so then they moved her we'd only found out about it when they moved her to a different facility. So that's why it's really important to investigate first, and then to stay in touch or let us know so we can stay in touch. And then when they went to the new facility, they definitely filled out a new inventory, right, for this dear lady, and started feeding her, because they would take the food in and then just leave it there. And then if she needed help with eating or whatever, they'd come back and get it, and her plate was still full, I mean, oh, So anyway, just my point was, just because you're paying a lot of money, don't think that they're getting really good care.
Good point.
All right, well, Pat, I think, do you have any final thoughts or comments?
I just wanted to thank Mary Jane and Arlen. I think this was a great information session. I think you've got a lot of people that can pass the word around for you. And well, we should do this periodically, Mary Jane, just to get more and more people involved so that, you know, the community's aware of what you do and what great advocates you are for their folks.
We're in, we're ready,
Oh.
right, Arlen?
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank all of you folks from ACV for joining us. And Priscilla will follow up. She'll email you those sheets that Mary Jane had with the website for licensing and contact numbers.
And
Thank
don't
you.
hesitate to reach out to us, please. We're happy to help.
Yeah, we kick.
We kick what? Okay, Arlen.
We kick whatever's
Everybody have a good
necessary.
weekend. Keep
Okay.
safe.
Bye, everyone.